In a decree that sent shockwaves through the galaxy, alien King Nezo declared Earth strictly off-limits to all extraterrestrial civilizations. Any incursions would be met with the full force of his mighty Eliani Empire. The Galactic Council convened in a tense emergency session. 12 seats encircled a floating holotable, filled by holograms of the representatives from the most influential species in the Milky Way. Solemn faces flickered as they discussed the grave situation. King Nezo's forces had cut a swath of conquest across the galaxy. His highly advanced Eliani warships left only subjugated worlds in their wake. Rumors swirled that his burning red eyes had now turned hungrily towards Earth. Earth, home to humanity, the only species to successfully fight off an Eliani invasion in recorded history. The Eliani assault fleet sent to conquer the human homeworld 50 years ago never returned. Only garbled transmissions of desperate alien screams and human battle cries were ever intercepted. The Eliani had underestimated humankind then. King Nezo would not make the same mistake. The Council needed intelligence on Nezo's plans for Earth, and they needed it fast. They had to insert an operative into Nezo's inner circle. There was only one clear choice for such a dangerous mission: Terry Webb. Webb was ex-Special Forces. A veteran Navy SEAL and CIA field agent, his skills were unmatched. Extensive training and innate talents allowed him to infiltrate alien societies with ease. His arsenal included an advanced universal translator, a cloaking exoskeleton, and an experimental plasma rifle reverse-engineered from captured Eliani tech. As Webb's sleek stealth ship sliced through the void towards Eliani space, a singular thought consumed him. He could not fail. If he did, Earth would burn and humanity would be enslaved under King Nezo's iron rule, or worse, eradicated entirely as an example to any other species who dared defy the Eliani. The survival of the human race now rested squarely on Webb's shoulders. Webb's stealth ship slipped through the Eliani planetary defenses undetected, its cloaking field blending seamlessly with the void of space. The ship touched down on the outskirts of the Eliani capital, a sprawling metropolis of towering spires that pierced the clouds. Skyscrapers of gleaming alloys and pulsing energy conduits stretched as far as the eye could see. Webb activated his personal cloaking device, the advanced tech rendering him invisible to the naked eye, and most scanners. He made his way through the bustling city streets, dodging the crowds of Eliani going about their daily business. Their red eyes gleamed with a fierce intensity, a stark contrast to their pale blue skin. The royal palace loomed ahead, a massive structure that dwarfed the surrounding buildings. Its walls were adorned with intricate carvings depicting the conquests of the Eliani Empire. Webb slipped past the guards and infiltrated the palace, his heart pounding in his chest as he navigated the labyrinthine halls. Using a hacking device, Webb gained access to Nezo's personal computer system. He quickly downloaded terabytes of data, his eyes widening as he discovered the true scope of Nezo's plans. The Eliani king was preparing a massive invasion force with over 10,000 warships and 1 million warriors ready to descend upon Earth. But that wasn't the worst of it. Webb's blood ran cold as he read about Nezo's secret weapon, a mind control device capable of enslaving entire populations. With this technology, Nezo could conquer Earth without firing a single shot, turning humanity into a race of mindless drones. Knowing he had to act fast, Webb set out to sabotage the Eliani fleet and steal the mind control device. But as he made his way through the palace, he was suddenly surrounded by Nezo's elite guard. They had somehow detected his presence, despite his cloaking device. Webb fought valiantly, his plasma rifle cutting down scores of Eliani warriors, but there were too many of them. He was overwhelmed and captured, his weapons and tech confiscated. The guards dragged him down into the depths of the palace, into a high-security prison complex. The prison was a maze of tunnels and cells, each one housing the most dangerous prisoners from across the galaxy. Webb was thrown into a cell, his body aching from the brutal beating he had received. As he lay there, wondering if he had failed his mission, he heard a voice from the cell next to his. "You're human, aren't you?" the voice asked. Webb sat up, wincing at the pain in his ribs. "Who's asking?" A face appeared at the small window in the cell door. It was a man, his features gaunt and his hair long and unkempt, but there was a fierce determination in his eyes. "Name's Jack Riker, former Marine. Got captured during a recon mission in Eliani space, been here for months." Webb introduced himself, explaining his mission and what he had learned about Nesso's plans. Riker's eyes widened. "We have to stop him," he said. "If Nesso gets his hands on Earth, it's all over." Webb nodded. "Agreed, but first we need to get out of here." The two men spent the next few hours planning their escape, using their combined knowledge and skills to come up with a strategy. They would have to fight their way out, using whatever weapons they could improvise from their surroundings. As they prepared to put their plan into action, Webb felt a renewed sense of determination. He had come too far to fail now. Earth was counting on him, and he would not let his homeworld fall. He would stop Nesso, no matter the cost. Back in the palace, Webb and Riker exchanged a quick nod before splitting up. Webb headed for the Royal Armory, while Riker made his way to Nesso's private chambers. Webb crept through the palace halls, his cloaking device rendering him invisible. He reached the armory and slipped inside, finding a group of Eliani technicians huddled around a strange device. It was a new type of plasma cannon, its barrel glowing with an eerie blue light. Webb didn't hesitate. He sprang into action, his movements a blur as he engaged the technicians in hand-to-hand combat. His advanced training made short work of the Eliani, and within seconds they lay unconscious at his feet. Working quickly, Webb planted explosives at key points throughout the armory. He set the timers and then moved on, his heart pounding with adrenaline. Meanwhile, Riker had reached Nesso's chambers. He picked the lock and slipped inside, his eyes scanning the room for the mind control device. There, on a pedestal in the center of the room, sat a small sphere pulsing with energy. Riker reached for the device, his fingers inches from its surface, when the door suddenly burst open. Nesso stormed in, flanked by a dozen Eliani warriors. "You dare to steal from me?" Nesso roared, his red eyes blazing with fury. Riker didn't answer. Instead, he charged forward, engaging the warriors in a fierce battle. He used every skill he had learned as a Marine, dodging energy blasts and delivering devastating blows. Just as Riker was beginning to tire, a massive explosion rocked the palace. Webb had detonated the explosives in the armory, and the blast had taken out a large portion of the Eliani fleet. In the chaos, Riker snatched the mind control device and sprinted from the room. He met up with Webb in the palace courtyard, and together they raced towards a small spacecraft. Laser blasts sizzled past them as they ran, Nesso and his warriors in hot pursuit. Webb laid down covering fire with his plasma rifle, buying them just enough time to reach the ship. They leapt inside, Riker taking the controls as Webb sealed the hatch. The ship lifted off, rocketing away from the palace and into the sky. Behind them, Nesso's furious roar echoed through the city. Webb and Riker exchanged a grim smile as they broke through the planet's atmosphere. They had struck a blow against Nesso, but they knew the fight was far from over. Earth still needed them, and they would not rest until their homeworld was safe. The spacecraft hurtled through space, Eliani warships closing in fast. Webb and Riker prepared for the fight of their lives, knowing that the fate of humanity hung in the balance. The stolen spacecraft shuddered as another blast from the pursuing Eliani warship slammed into its shields. Webb gritted his teeth, hands flying over the controls as he tried to evade the relentless onslaught. "Riker, tell me you've got something," Webb shouted over the blaring alarms. Riker hunched over the ship's computer, his fingers a blur as he worked to hack into the Eliani systems. "Almost there. Got it." On the view screen, the massive Eliani warship loomed into view, its weapons glowing with deadly energy. A hail from the enemy ship crackled over the comms. "This is General Zoltar of the Eliani Empire. Surrender now, humans, and hand over the mind control device." Webb's eyes narrowed. "Not a chance, Zoltar. That device is coming with us." Zoltar's face twisted with rage. "Then you will be destroyed." The Eliani ship opened fire, a barrage of plasma blasts hammering the humans' shields. Webb wrenched the controls, sending their craft into a dizzying spiral to avoid the worst of the assault. Riker's console beeped urgently. "I'm in their system, but their firewall is adapting. I need more time." Webb nodded grimly, sweat beading on his forehead as he pushed the ship to its limits. The hull groaned under the strain, but Webb refused to back down. Plasma scorched past the cockpit, barely missing them as Webb ducked and weaved through the deadly storm. The Eliani ship was faster and more heavily armed, its weapons pounding the humans' dwindling shields. But Webb was a master pilot, drawing on every ounce of his training and experience. He jinked and rolled, using the smaller ship's agility to his advantage, staying just ahead of the Eliani's targeting locks. Riker let out a triumphant shout, "Shields down!" Webb didn't hesitate. His fingers flew over the weapons controls, locking onto the Eliani ship and launching a blistering volley of missiles. The projectiles slammed into the warship's unprotected hull, explosions blossoming across its surface like fiery flowers. Zoltar's ship reeled, smoke pouring from gaping wounds in its armor. But the Eliani general wasn't finished. With a roar of rage, he ordered his crew to ram the humans' ship, determined to crush them even at the cost of his own life. Webb's eyes widened as the Eliani ship surged forward, its bulk filling the view screen. There was no time to evade, no way to survive the coming impact. In a last desperate gamble, Webb snatched up the mind control device. He focused his thoughts on Zoltar, pouring his will into the alien device. For a moment that stretched into eternity, nothing happened. Then Zoltar's voice came over the comms, strangely flat and devoid of emotion. "All units, stand down, the attack is off." The Eliani ship slowed, its weapons falling silent. Webb let out a shuddering breath, hardly daring to believe their desperate ploy had worked. But they had no time to celebrate. With Zoltar under their control, Webb and Riker seized their chance. They docked with the Eliani warship and stormed aboard, quickly overwhelming the confused and leaderless crew. On the bridge, Zoltar stood motionless, his eyes blank as Webb and Riker took control of the ship. Webb input new coordinates, setting a course for Earth. They had to warn the Galactic Council of the coming invasion, and the Eliani warship would get them there faster than their battered spacecraft ever could. As the stars blurred into the swirling vortex of hyperspace, Webb and Riker exchanged a weary glance. They had won this battle, but the war for Earth's survival was... The stolen Eliani warship tore through hyperspace, the stars streaking past in a blur of light. Webb and Riker stood on the bridge, their eyes fixed on the view screen as they approached Earth. They had done the impossible, striking a blow against the Eliani Empire, and stealing the mind control device that threatened to enslave all of humanity. But their mission was far from over. As they dropped out of hyperspace, a fleet of human warships filled the screen. At the center of the formation was a massive battleship, its hull emblazoned with the insignia of the United Earth Defense Force. A hail crackled over the comms, and a familiar face appeared on the screen. "Terry Webb, you son of a bitch," Admiral Sarah Novak said, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "I thought I told you to stop saving the galaxy without me." Webb grinned, his heart swelling at the sight of his former commanding officer and secret lover. "You know me, Sarah. I never was one for following orders." Novak's expression turned serious. "Listen up, Webb. The Galactic Council just declared Earth off-limits to all alien species. They finally recognized the role humanity played in kicking the Eliani's asses 50 years ago." Riker let out a low whistle. "Damn, that's big." Novak nodded. "But that's not all. We just got word that NATO launched a surprise attack on Earth. He's not backing down even with the Council's declaration." Webb's hands tightened on the controls. "How long until they reach Earth?" "Minutes," Novak replied grimly. "We need to intercept them before they enter Earth's orbit. Once they're in range of the surface, it's game over." Webb looked at Riker, a silent understanding passing between them. They had come too far to let Nesso win now. "We're with you, Admiral," Webb said. "Let's show these Eliani bastards what happens when you mess with humanity. The human fleet surged forward. Webb and Riker's captured warship taking point. As they approached the Eliani invasion force, the scale of the enemy fleet became apparent. Thousands of ships filled the void, their hulls bristling with weapons. The battle erupted in a blaze of plasma fire and missiles. The human ships fought with everything they had, their advanced technology and tactics allowing them to punch above their weight. But the Eliani had numbers on their side, and they pressed their advantage ruthlessly. Webb and Riker dove into the heart of the battle, their ship weaving through the enemy formation like a needle through cloth. They targeted the Eliani ship's weak points, disabling their weapons and engines with surgical precision. But it wasn't enough. The Eliani kept coming, their ships replacing those that fell like a hydra sprouting new heads. The human fleet was being pushed back, their losses mounting with every passing second. Webb gritted his teeth, his mind racing as he tried to find a way out. Then his eyes fell on the mind control device, still pulsing with energy. He looked at Riker, a desperate plan forming in his mind. "Riker, do you trust me?" he asked. Riker nodded without hesitation. "Always." Webb grabbed the mind control device, his fingers flying over its controls. He reached out with his mind, feeling the device amplify his thoughts and project them across the battlefield. One by one, the Eliani warriors fell under his sway. Their eyes glazed over, their movements becoming jerky and uncoordinated. Then, to the horror of their commanders, they turned their weapons on each other. The Eliani fleet descended into chaos, ships firing on their own allies as the mind-controlled warriors wreaked havoc. The tide of the battle turned, the human fleet surging forward as they pressed their advantage. But the mind control device was never meant to be used on such a scale. It began to overheat, its energy readings spiking into the red. Webb poured everything he had into maintaining control, his head pounding with the effort. Just as it seemed the device would hold, it exploded in a blinding flash of light. The feedback tore through Webb's mind, sending him to his knees in agony. He blinked away the spots in his vision, his heart dropping into his stomach as he saw Riker lying motionless on the deck, the life gone from his eyes. Webb let out a howl of grief and rage, the loss of his friend and ally tearing at his soul. But there was no time to mourn. The Eliani fleet was in disarray, but Nesso's flagship still loomed ahead, a massive dreadnought bristling with the most powerful weapons in the Eliani arsenal. Webb knew what he had to do. He set a course for the dreadnought, his eyes hard with determination. He would end this once and for all. The human fleet watched in shocked silence as Webb's ship hurtled towards the Eliani flagship, its engines pushing beyond their limits. The dreadnought opened fire, its weapons tearing through the stolen warship's shields like tissue paper. But Webb didn't falter. With a final defiant roar, he plunged his ship into the dreadnought's reactor core. The resulting explosion was blinding, a miniature supernova that consumed both ships in an instant. When the glare faded, the Eliani flagship was gone, reduced to a cloud of molten debris, and with it, the Eliani fleet's will to fight. They broke off their attack, fleeing back into the depths of space. The battle was over, the galaxy was saved, but the price had been high. Admiral Novak stood on the bridge of her ship, her eyes fixed on the spot where Webb and Riker had made their final stand. Tears streamed down her face, the weight of their sacrifice settling on her shoulders like a physical thing. She knew that Earth was safe, that the threat of the Eliani had been beaten back once again, but as she gazed out at the stars, she couldn't help but feel that the galaxy had lost something precious. Terry Webb and Jack Riker had given everything to protect humanity, to ensure that the flame of human civilization would continue to burn bright. They were heroes, in every sense of the word. And they would never be forgotten. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.